You've cried about it, prayed over it, fasted through it, and still nothing changed. The door you keep knocking on refuses to open. The relationship you keep pouring into keeps draining you. The plan you're holding on to keeps falling apart in your hands. And deep down, God is trying to shut it down, but you won't let go. You keep forcing what God has already closed. You call it faith, but it's really fear. Fear of being wrong, fear of being alone, fear of starting over. So you convince yourself that if you just try harder, believe louder, wait longer, it'll eventually work. But no matter how many times you patch it up, it breaks again. That's not warfare. That's a warning. God is speaking, but you're too busy striving to hear Him. The truth is, you're trying to resurrect what God already buried. You're trying to rewrite a chapter He already ended. And every time you pick it back up, you delay your own healing. You can't step into what's next while dragging around what God told you to release. Every door He closes is not a punishment, it's protection. Every silence is not neglect, it's direction. But you keep pushing anyway, hoping He'll bless what He already blocked. You see, God doesn't just speak through open doors. He speaks through the ones He slams shut. The relationship that fell apart wasn't random. The opportunity that slipped away wasn't a mistake. The people who left were never meant to stay, but your heart keeps reaching for what your spirit knows is over. And you wonder why you're exhausted. It's because you're fighting God's will in the name of your own desire. Stop trying to revive what God allowed to die. Stop calling it a delay when it's really a denial. There's a difference between endurance and resistance. And sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is walk away. Because what you're holding on to is costing you more than you know. Your peace, your clarity, your future. God isn't being cruel, He's being clear. He keeps shutting the door because He knows what's behind it. You see potential, He sees the trap, you see comfort, He sees compromise. And while you're asking for another chance, He's asking for your trust. Can you trust Him when He says no? Can you trust Him when He ends what you thought would last? It's time to stop pushing. It's time to stop forcing. What God is closing, let it close. What God is removing, let it go. Because holding on to what He's trying to protect you from will never bring blessing, only delay. And God loves you too much to let you stay stuck in a place He's already left. It looked perfect. It sounded right. It even gave you peace for a moment. Everything about it made sense. The opportunity seemed tailor-made. The relationship felt like destiny. The timing felt divine. But just because it looks good doesn't mean it's from God. And if you're not careful, you'll fall in love with the idea of something and miss the truth about it altogether. The enemy doesn't just come with fear and chaos. He comes with counterfeit peace. He knows how to package distraction in the wrapping paper of blessing. He knows how to make it look like favor when it's really a trap. And because it feels good to your emotions, you assume it must be confirmation. But feelings aren't proof. Alignment is. Too many people are chasing what looks right instead of what is right. You're drawn to the surface without checking the source. You see chemistry and call it calling. You see success and call it favor. You see connection and assume it's covenant. But not every good thing is a God thing. And when you build your decisions on emotions, you'll always need your emotions to sustain them. God doesn't confirm His will through how comfortable it makes you feel. He confirms it through conviction, alignment, and fruit. But you won't see that if your heart is louder than His voice. Sometimes God will block what looks like a blessing because He knows what's buried beneath it. He sees the manipulation behind the charm. He sees the pride behind the opportunity. He sees the compromise behind the applause. You asked for confirmation but ignored the conviction. You prayed for direction but closed your ears to correction because deep down, you didn't want God's will, you wanted His permission to chase your own, but God loves you too much to bless a path that leads away from Him, so He interrupts it, He exposes it, He tears it down before it can take root in your life. The truth is, the enemy doesn't need to drag you into rebellion. All he needs to do is convince you that your feelings are more trustworthy than your faith. But faith doesn't follow what feels good. It follows what is good, even when it's uncomfortable. So before you call it God, pause. Pray again, surrender again, lay your emotions on the altar, and ask Him to strip it down to the truth. Because if it's from Him, it won't just look right, it will be right. It won't just feed your feelings, it will align with your purpose. And it won't just start with peace, it will produce lasting fruit. Don't settle for what looks good when God is still writing what is good. Because when it's truly Him, you won't have to force it, fake it, or chase it. It'll carry His fingerprints, and His peace won't just visit, it'll remain. You called it love. You thought it was a blessing. In the beginning, it felt like favor. You thanked God for them. You believed they were the one, but somewhere along the way, the peace faded, the joy dimmed, and the fruit turned bitter. What once felt holy has now become heavy. What once brought clarity now brings confusion, and still you stay, you cling, you fight for what God is trying to remove. This is what happens when love becomes idolatry, when your heart is so entangled with a person that you no longer hear God clearly, when your identity gets wrapped in who they are instead of who He is, when your prayers shift from Lord, let your will be done, to Lord, just let me keep them. That's not love anymore. That's bondage disguised as devotion. God keeps showing you the signs. He highlights the cycles. He lets the arguments repeat. He removes the peace. He stirs the discomfort, not because He's cruel, but because He's calling you out. He's warning you that what you're calling a blessing has become a barrier. You're trying to protect what He's trying to release you from. And the longer you hold on, the more it costs you. Your focus, your faith, your future. The truth is, love becomes dangerous when it takes God's place, when their opinion matters more than His voice, when their presence is more comforting than His word, when their validation becomes your source of worth. That's not covenant, that's idolatry. And God is too jealous for you to let you stay there. You keep saying, but they have potential. You remind yourself of how things used to be. You hope that if you just pray harder, try more, wait longer, they'll change. But God is not in the business of maintaining what He never ordained. He doesn't bless disobedience. He doesn't make peace out of dysfunction. And He will never ask you to stay in something that's pulling you further from Him. Sometimes God allows a relationship to start not because it's permanent, but because it's a mirror, to show you where you're still healing, to expose the cracks, to refine your discernment. But just because He used it doesn't mean He wants you to stay in it. You weren't created to worship love. You were created to worship God. And when He sees anything trying to take His place, He will shake it, He will test it, and if necessary, He will remove it, not to punish you, but to protect you. So if God is pulling you away, stop pulling back. If He's saying, let go, stop clinging tighter, because the person you're trying to hold on to may be the one thing standing between you and the next level of your purpose. Love them, forgive them, bless them, but don't idolize them. God is your first love, and when He's first, everything else will fall into place. You're still praying for it, still asking, still hoping, still begging, hoping God will change His mind. You've anointed it in prayer. You've fasted over it. You've cried over it. But deep down, you already know what He said. He said no. And no matter how long you wait, His answer hasn't changed. Because God is not moved by emotion. He is moved by purpose. It's dangerous to keep praying for what God has already denied. Not because prayer is wrong, but because disobedience wrapped in persistence can become rebellion. You're not seeking clarity anymore. You're seeking a different outcome. You're trying to bend the will of God to match your desire, but God doesn't bend. He breaks what's misaligned to build what's divine. You keep asking for the job even though the door already shut. You keep praying for the person even though God already removed them. You keep hoping for the opportunity even though the peace left months ago. And every time God says no, you act like He's silent, but He's not silent. He's just not saying what you want to hear. His no is not cruelty, it's covering, it's mercy, it's protection dressed as disappointment, because He sees what you can't. He sees the heartbreak that offer would have brought. He sees the spiritual compromise behind that relationship. He sees how the very thing you're asking for would have distracted you, derailed you, or destroyed you. And because He loves you, He said no. But instead of letting it go, you hold on to it in prayer like a child begging for something dangerous, hoping that if you cry loud enough, God will make an exception. But God doesn't operate in pity. He operates in purpose. He will not bless what He's already decided to block. He will not say yes to what contradicts your calling. You think persistence will make Him change His mind, but what if He's waiting for you to change yours? To trust that His no is just as loving as His yes, to believe that closed doors are not rejection, they're redirection. To realize that delay is not always spiritual warfare, sometimes it's divine protection. Some of the most powerful prayers you'll ever pray are the ones that end in surrender. God, if it's not your will, don't let it happen, even if I want it, even if I planned for it, even if I prayed for it. That's real trust. That's maturity. That's when your heart stops chasing outcomes and starts chasing Him. So stop asking Him to bless what He already said no to. Stop revisiting altars He told you to walk away from. He heard you the first time, and He said no, not to hurt you, but to help you, because what He has planned is not just good, it's God. And when it's truly Him, you won't have to force it, beg for it, or fear it. His yes comes with peace. His no comes with purpose. The door closed and you thought God was against you. You called it rejection. You called it delay. You called it unfair. But what if that door didn't close to punish you? It closed to protect you. What if that no wasn't rejection, but rescue? Because you were praying for opportunity, but God saw the chains behind it. You were asking for favor, but He saw the bondage hidden in the blessing you wanted so badly. God sees what you can't. He hears the conversations you're not in. He knows the intentions behind the offer, the spirit behind the invitation, the trap behind the opportunity. And sometimes the most spiritual act of love He can give you is a door that refuses to open, not because He's trying to withhold good from you, but because He's trying to keep you from walking into a counterfeit dressed as a breakthrough. You don't realize it yet, but that closed door covered you. It shielded your purpose. It blocked something that would have drained you, distracted you, or slowly destroyed the very thing God was building in you. What looked like a missed moment was actually mercy. What looked like a dead end was actually divine protection, but your heart wanted it. So now you're grieving something God had no intention of giving. You're weeping over a door He locked for your safety. You're still asking why it didn't work, why they left, why it fell through, and God is saying, you have no idea what I kept you from. Sometimes we get so focused on what we lost, we miss what we escaped. That job looked like promotion, but it would have crushed your soul. That relationship looked like destiny, but it would have buried your identity. That platform looked like success, but it would have compromised your calling. So God stepped in and said no, not because He was being distant, but because He was being nearer than you knew. You see disappointment. He sees deliverance. You see denial. He sees direction. Closed doors are not the enemy. They are often the evidence that God still has His hand on your life, because if He didn't care, He'd let you walk through anything. But because He loves you, He blocks what your eyes can't discern. The door that didn't open wasn't a mistake. It was covered, sealed, guarded by grace. So don't try to break it down. Don't keep knocking. Don't stand there angry at God for saving you. Trust His no as much as you trust His yes. Because when God closes a door, it's not the end of your story. It's the beginning of His protection. And whatever is truly yours won't require forcing, begging, or bargaining. It will come through the doors He opens, doors that lead to freedom, not bondage. You're still holding on, not because it's healthy, not because there's peace, but because you're waiting for someone to give you permission to walk away. You're waiting for validation, waiting for people to understand, waiting for the right moment that feels easier. But here's the truth. When God tells you to let go, that word is enough. You don't need applause. You don't need consensus. You don't need a committee. You just need obedience. Letting go hurts because we're wired to fix, to hold, to preserve what once felt like purpose. But not everything God started, He intends for you to sustain. Some things were seasonal, some people were temporary, some doors were only meant to teach you something, not to hold you forever. And when God says it's time, you don't wait for comfort, you move. You've been waiting for them to change, waiting for things to feel right again, waiting for confirmation wrapped in peace. But God already gave you the word. The situation already shifted, the grace already lifted, and you can feel it. You just don't want to face it because walking away looks like quitting. Letting go feels like failure. But what if it's actually faith, obedience? Doesn't always come with comfort. Sometimes it comes with silence. Sometimes it comes with tears. Sometimes it comes with the ache of knowing people won't understand why you chose to follow God instead of their expectations. But when He tells you to move, you don't need everyone else to see it. He saw it. That's enough. You're not crazy. You're not cold-hearted. You're not being selfish. You're being obedient. And sometimes obedience means releasing what you prayed so hard for. Not because it wasn't good in its time, but because it's not God for this time. The longer you hold on to what He's trying to remove, the more you'll delay what He's trying to release. Stop waiting for the pain to disappear before you let go. Letting go will hurt, but staying will destroy you. And God never asks you to stay where He's no longer present. You don't need them to approve. You don't need them to understand. The Word was enough to create the universe, so surely it's enough to shift your life. When God says go, go. When He says let go, release it. Don't second guess His voice because it costs you comfort. Don't silence conviction to preserve connection. The blessing is not in what you hold on to. The blessing is in what you trust Him with. Letting go is not weakness. It's worship. It says, God, I trust you more than I trust my own desires. So stop waiting for permission. You already have it. Heaven has spoken. Now it's time to obey, even if it hurts. You heard the instruction. You felt the nudge. God spoke and you knew it was Him. He told you to walk away, to release it, to let go. But instead of moving, you hesitated. You told yourself, I'll wait for confirmation, even though confirmation already came. You delayed, and now you're wondering why things feel heavy, why peace is gone, why everything feels stuck. It's because delayed obedience is still disobedience. God doesn't just speak to inform, He speaks to direct. And when He gives an instruction, it's not a suggestion. It's an invitation into alignment. But when you pause too long, you start reasoning with what He already revealed. You start justifying your delay. You convince yourself that maybe you didn't hear Him clearly. Maybe it's not the right time. Maybe He'll give you more grace. But deep down, you know, you're just afraid to let go. The danger of delayed obedience is that it doesn't just cost time, it can cost opportunity. Grace is real, but so is timing. There are some doors that only open in specific seasons. There are some exits that lead directly into destiny, but only if you walk when He says walk. Hesitation is not harmless, it's costly. And the longer you stay where he told you to leave, the heavier it gets. Jonah didn't say no to God, he just said not now. And his delay landed him in a storm. Not because God was angry, but because God was realigning him. Sometimes the storm is not the enemy, it's the consequence of delay. It's God reminding you that obedience is not on your terms. It's not when you feel ready, it's when he says, move. You're holding on to what God already released you from, still trying to salvage what he already stripped, still trying to carry what grace no longer covers, and every day you stay longer than you were supposed to, it drains you, drains your energy, drains your clarity, drains your spirit. That's what delayed obedience does. It keeps you bound to what was instead of stepping into what is. God's instruction doesn't always make sense in the moment. It doesn't always feel good, but it's always right. And the more you delay, the more you risk becoming numb to his voice. Because disobedience doesn't just harden your heart, it dulls your discernment. You stop recognizing the difference between your will and his. You don't need more signs. You don't need more time. You need courage. You need trust. You need to move. Because the blessing isn't just in hearing God, it's in obeying him. Obedience activates favor. Obedience opens doors. Obedience aligns your life with his purpose. But you can't walk in obedience and delay at the same time. So if God has spoken, go. Don't wait for it to get easier. Don't wait for everyone to understand. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. And what you don't obey in faith, you'll wrestle with in frustration. Move now before it costs you more than you're willing to lose. They left, they stopped calling, they pulled away, and it hurt. You called it rejection, you took it personally, you thought something was wrong with you. You replayed the conversations, you blamed yourself, but what you called abandonment, heaven called protection. Because sometimes God doesn't just close doors, he removes people, not to harm you, but to shield you. You were trying to hold it all together, trying to be enough, trying to fix what kept breaking. You prayed to keep them. You begged God to restore what was falling apart, but it still ended, and you wondered, why would God allow this? Why would he let them walk away when you prayed so hard for them to stay? Because he saw what you couldn't. He saw the motives behind the mask. He saw the heart that wasn't fully with you. He saw the way their presence was slowly pulling you out of alignment. And in his mercy, he let it unravel, not to punish you, but to protect what he planted inside you. You were so focused on the loss, you didn't see the rescue. That breakup wasn't rejection, it was divine intervention. That fallout wasn't failure, it was freedom. God was removing what you would have never let go of on your own. And even though it broke your heart, it saved your purpose. It's hard to see it in the moment. Rejection feels personal. It feels like abandonment. But God is not careless with his children. When he allows separation, there's always strategy. He doesn't just subtract. He makes space. And what he removes is never greater than what he's preparing. You thought you needed them. You thought the connection was covenant. But just because someone started with you doesn't mean they're assigned to finish with you. Not every goodbye is the devil. Some goodbyes are God, because he knows what's waiting down the road. He knows who can handle your calling and who can't. He knows who would have slowed you down, distracted you, or poisoned the promise. So stop chasing people God removed. Stop mourning doors he shut. You're not rejected, you're protected. And what felt like loss was actually love. The kind of love that steps in and saves you from what you couldn't see. The kind of love that says, I'll break your heart now so you don't lose your future later. You don't need closure from them. You've already got confirmation from heaven. The shift was necessary, the silence was sacred, and what's coming is better than what walked away. So lift your head, dry your tears. You're not less because they left. You're not forgotten because it ended. You're covered, you're chosen, you're protected, and that's more than enough. You're exhausted, not because the battle is spiritual, but because you're fighting to keep alive what God is trying to let die. You've been forcing it, trying to fix it, pouring yourself out to preserve something that's draining you, delaying you, and quietly destroying you. And you don't realize every time you force it, you forfeit something greater. You're clinging to what's familiar, but you're forfeiting what's divine. You say you trust God, but your grip says otherwise, because trust releases, but fear clutches. And while you've convinced yourself that holding on is strength, what you're really doing is resisting His will in the name of your own. You're trying to carry something that no longer carries His blessing. You're trying to revive what God already ruled over. You keep asking Him to bless it, but He already moved on. He lifted the grace. The peace left. The fruit stopped growing. And yet you're still there, watering dry ground, praying over what's already been uprooted, hoping He'll make an exception for what was never meant to last. But God doesn't bless what you won't release. You can't hold dysfunction and expect destiny to thrive. It's not that God doesn't want to give you more, it's that your hands are too full of what you refuse to let go of. You're trading destiny for dysfunction. You're sacrificing purpose on the altar of control. And the longer you hold on, the heavier it gets. Because anything not sustained by God will always require your striving to survive. There's a difference between persistence and rebellion, between waiting in faith and forcing your own will. And some of us have crossed that line without even realizing it. We've become so obsessed with keeping things together that we've started calling disobedience commitment. But faith doesn't force. Trust doesn't chase what's fleeing. Obedience doesn't hold on to what God is removing. You're not helping yourself by staying. You're not proving loyalty. You're prolonging pain. Because every time you resist what God is shifting, you delay what He's preparing. The door won't open because you're still anchored to the wrong room. The new can't arrive because you keep dragging the old into every season. And if you keep forcing it, you'll eventually miss it. God's best is not something you have to strive for. It comes with peace. It aligns. It flows. But if you insist on controlling the outcome, you'll end up outside of the blessing He designed for you. Because God won't compete with your will. He'll let you choose. He'll let you fight. He'll let you learn until you're finally ready to surrender. So let go. Stop forcing it. Because every time you do, you're not just breaking yourself, you're breaking the connection to what God truly wants to release in your life. You weren't created to manage dysfunction. You were created to walk in divine purpose. Don't forfeit what's eternal just to keep what's familiar. Let it go. You used to sleep easy. You used to walk with clarity. You used to feel steady in your spirit, but somewhere along the line, the peace left and you noticed it. The anxiety crept in. The restlessness grew louder. The tension in your spirit couldn't be ignored. And still, you stayed. You tried to silence the warning signs. You called it stress, transition, pressure. But it wasn't just that. It was the absence of God's peace. And when peace leaves, it's often because God already has. We don't talk about this enough. How peace is a voice. How the stillness in your soul isn't just a feeling, it's a signal. Peace is one of the clearest ways God confirms His presence. It doesn't mean the path is easy. It doesn't mean life is perfect. But even in the storm, His peace anchors you. It steadies your yes. It surrounds your surrender. So when it disappears, that's not a small thing. That's heaven saying, this isn't it. Some of you stepped into the relationship, and from the very beginning, your peace was gone. You didn't even have language for it at the time, but your spirit knew. The tension didn't just come from fear, it came from misalignment. Others took the job, chased the opportunity, said yes to the plan, and peace vanished the moment you said go. Not because God left you completely, but because you stepped out of agreement with His will. He didn't stop loving you, He just stopped leading there. And yet, instead of turning back, you doubled down. You tried to fake peace through busyness. You tried to manufacture comfort through routine. But peace can't be faked. It's either present or it's not. And when God removes it, it's His mercy, not His punishment. He's trying to speak, He's trying to redirect, but you've been treating the discomfort like a problem to fix instead of a message to hear. Peace is not a luxury in the kingdom, it's a compass. And God will let the peace lift to show you you've gone off course, not because He's done with you, but because He's calling you back. Back to alignment, back to trust, back to the place where He is. You don't have to live anxious. You don't have to wake up heavy. You don't have to force a false sense of okay. If the peace left, pay attention. If the rest in your soul is gone, ask why. Because God is not the author of confusion, and He doesn't hide His presence in chaos. His peace is proof, His peace is protection, and when it's missing, it's time to listen. Don't chase what cost you your peace. Don't stay where God no longer is. Go where He leads, and peace will follow, because where God is, peace remains. Letting go doesn't feel like worship. It feels like loss, like failure, like weakness. It feels like walking away from everything you prayed for, everything you built, everything you believed would work. But what if that moment right there in your heartbreak, your surrender, your silent yes to God is the purest form of worship? Because true worship is not just about lifting your hands, it's about laying something down. Obedience is worship, not when it's easy, not when it makes sense, but when it costs you, when it requires your will to bow, when it demands that you trust God more than your feelings, more than your timeline, more than your plan. And sometimes the most powerful act of faith isn't pushing forward. It's releasing what no longer carries His presence. You wanted it to work. You poured your heart into it. You invested your time, your energy, your love, but God said, let it go. Not because He wanted to break you, but because He wanted to build you. Not because He's cruel, but because He's sovereign. And in that moment, when you finally release it, when you let it fall from your hands, that's when worship becomes real. Letting go is not giving up. Letting go is giving back. It's saying, God, I trust you with this more than I trust myself. It's admitting that you're not in control, and that's okay. It's laying your Isaac on the altar, knowing that whether God resurrects it or removes it, He's still worthy. That's worship. There is strength in surrender, power in obedience, and freedom in release. You don't lose when you let go. You lose when you hold on to what God is no longer breathing on. Because what you keep in fear, you'll eventually forfeit in frustration. But what you surrender in faith, God redeems in glory. And here's the truth. What God asks you to release, He never intends to waste. He sees the tears. He feels the ache. He knows how much it meant to you, but He also knows what's ahead. He knows what's waiting on the other side of your obedience, and what He has for you is never found in what you cling to, but in what you give back to Him. So lift your hands, not in defeat, but in devotion. Let the tears fall, not because you're weak, but because you're worshiping through the pain. This is holy ground. This is where transformation happens. This is where destiny begins. You're not just letting go. You're honoring God. You're trusting Him with the outcome, and that is worship. You've been asking God for more, for clarity, for breakthrough, for open doors and divine opportunities. You've been praying for the next, crying out for the better, waiting for the promise. But here's the truth you've been avoiding. You can't receive what's next if your hands are still clinging to what God told you to release. You say you're ready for new, but you're still holding the old with a closed fist. And heaven is waiting on one thing, your surrender. God has something better. Not just slightly better, not just emotionally safer, but better by heaven's definition. Aligned, anointed, appointed, but He won't force it into your life. He waits for space. He waits for release, because the kingdom doesn't operate on striving. It operates on surrender. And if your hands are full of what no longer fits your future, there's no room for what He's trying to place in them. You've been wrestling with this thing, asking God to bless it, trying to make it work, hoping He'll change His mind. But deep down, you already know. He said, let it go. He's been whispering it in the silence, confirming it in the lack of peace, making it clear through the closed doors, the fading grace, the weight that won't lift. But you keep holding on, not because it's working, but because it's familiar, safe, known. But faith doesn't cling to comfort. Faith releases. Faith trusts. Faith opens its hands and says, God, I want your will more than I want my plan. And until you say that, until you mean that, you'll keep circling the same mountain, praying for what you're not yet prepared to carry. God won't compete with your idols. He won't bless what's blocking you. He won't pour out the next while you're still nursing what was. And as long as your grip stays tight, you'll keep wondering why the promise feels delayed. But it's not delayed, it's waiting, waiting for your release, waiting for your trust, waiting for your yes. What's ahead of you is better, it's brighter, it's heavier in glory and deeper in purpose, but it comes at the cost of letting go. And letting go isn't loss, it's alignment. It's making room for God to do what only He can do. You're not being emptied, you're being prepared. So today, surrender, not just in words, but in action. Put it on the altar, the relationship, the job, the plan, the fear, the need to control. Let it go and trust that what He has is greater, that what's coming will make sense of what had to end, that His ways are higher and His timing is perfect. You're not losing your life. You're stepping into it, and God has something better, but it starts with release. It starts with trust. It starts right here. That desire in your heart, the longing to be seen, known, and loved, didn't come from the world. It came from God. It was planted in you before time began, not to torment you, but to align you with His divine design. You were created for relationship, not just with people, but with purpose. And because God is a God of order, He doesn't write your story as you live it. He wrote it before your first breath. He's not confused about your future. He's not wondering who your life partner will be. He knows. He always has. We live in a culture obsessed with speed. Rush the connection, force the timing, grab hold of whatever looks good before it slips away. But God is never in a hurry. He works in perfect rhythm, perfect order, perfect timing. Your life isn't random. Your love story isn't guesswork. It's intentional, strategic, anointed. And when God gets ready to reveal your person, it won't come through panic. It will come through peace. Too many people fall into relationships out of pressure, pressure from culture, pressure from timelines, pressure from loneliness. But pressure isn't how God operates. That's how the enemy manipulates. God doesn't push you into a relationship. He leads you with peace. He doesn't use anxiety to make you settle. He uses clarity to help you wait. When it's from Him, it won't feel rushed. It won't feel like striving. It will feel like rest. Not the absence of questions, but the presence of certainty. Look at Adam. He didn't go looking for Eve. He was placed in purpose first. And while he was walking in what God called him to do, God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." Adam didn't find Eve through striving. He received her in rest. And when God brought her to him, he knew immediately, this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. There was no guessing, no games, no confusion, just peace and clarity. God knows exactly who you need, and he knows exactly when to bring them. He's not waiting on you to figure it all out. He's waiting on your trust. Your job isn't to chase the connection. Your job is to pursue the caller. And as you walk in obedience, he will align your steps with someone who has also been walking in obedience. You don't have to manipulate the outcome. You just have to stay faithful in the process. So breathe, rest, trust. You're not behind, you're not forgotten. The one who holds time also holds your heart. And he's not confused, he's crafting something sacred. When the moment comes, you won't have to guess if it's God, you'll know, because what he reveals will carry peace, not pressure. The waiting season is not punishment, it's preparation. It may feel like silence, it may feel like stillness, but in heaven's timeline it is movement. Just because you haven't seen the promise yet doesn't mean God isn't working. Delay doesn't mean denial, it means development. God doesn't withhold to frustrate you, he withholds to shape you, because what he's preparing you for is too important to rush. There's something sacred about waiting. It reveals your motives, it tests your trust. It exposes the places in your heart that still need healing. You start to realize that this season isn't about finding someone, it's about becoming someone. God is not just preparing a partner for you, he's preparing you to be a partner for them. He's softening your pride, stretching your patience, and aligning your desires with his will. We often want the blessing now, but God is a God of timing. He won't deliver a promise that your character isn't ready to carry. That's not cruelty. It's mercy, because the right person at the wrong time can still lead to pain. If you force what isn't finished, you'll end up frustrated. That's why God doesn't answer every prayer with speed. He answers with strategy. His silence is never wasted. It's building something you can't yet see. Think of Joseph. He had the dream, the vision, the calling, but he didn't step into that destiny immediately. He was thrown into pits, prisons, and places that looked like setbacks. But every delay was molding his heart. Every test was preparing him to rule with humility. If Joseph had skipped the process, he wouldn't have been ready for the palace. And if you skip the waiting season, you risk walking into something unprepared, unequipped, and unrooted. God is not just writing a love story, he's writing a legacy, and legacies take time. So if it feels like nothing is happening, hold on. Something is. In the unseen places of your life, God is aligning, refining, and positioning you, not just to meet someone, but to recognize them when they arrive. And that kind of clarity only comes from time and his presence. You may look around and feel like you're the only one still waiting. You may see others entering relationships, getting married, building families, and wonder if God skipped over you, but he didn't. He's not slow, he's intentional. And when the timing is right, when your heart is ready, when your purpose is clear, he will reveal what he's been preparing all along. So don't rush the process. Don't settle for the counterfeit just because the promise hasn't come yet. Trust the waiting. Trust the refining. Because what God is preparing is too good to be rushed and too sacred to be forced. The promise is still coming, and when it arrives, it will be worth every moment you waited. Before God brings a partner, he reveals a purpose, because in the kingdom, partnership is not about romance alone. It's about assignment. You weren't just created for connection, you were created for calling. And until you know who you are, you won't recognize who's meant to walk beside you. The world says, find someone to complete you. God says, discover your purpose, and the right person will complement it. God will never send someone to distract you from your destiny. If the relationship pulls you away from your assignment, it's not from Him. If it clouds your focus, confuses your vision, or compromises your values, it's not divine alignment. It's a detour. Before God gave Adam a wife, He gave him a job, a role, a garden to tend, a purpose to walk in. Eve wasn't sent to give Adam identity. She was sent to walk with him in what God had already called him to do. When you understand your purpose, you begin to see relationships differently. You stop looking for someone who just looks good on paper, and you start looking for someone who aligns with the vision God gave you, someone who pushes you toward the cross, not away from it, someone who values obedience over opportunity, prayer over popularity, assignment over attention. Your calling must be clear before your connection is confirmed, because when you don't know who you are, you're vulnerable to connections that look right but lead wrong. That's why the enemy attacks identity first, because once you lose sight of who you are, you'll start attaching yourself to people who were never meant to carry your future. Purpose is the filter. Purpose is the protection. When you walk in it, you won't settle for distractions disguised as destiny. Ruth didn't find Boaz by chasing a man. She was busy serving in the field. Her purpose led her to the connection. And Boaz didn't fall for her appearance. He noticed her character, her work ethic, her loyalty. He recognized a woman walking in purpose, not desperation. That's how kingdom connection works. It's not manufactured, it's revealed in the middle of obedience, in the place of assignment. So before you pray for a person, ask God to clarify your purpose. Because when purpose is firm, the wrong people won't even feel right. You'll sense the disconnection before it turns into a distraction. And when the right one comes, you won't have to compromise who you are. You'll recognize that they're running the same race, fueled by the same fire, submitted to the same God. Partnership in the kingdom doesn't begin with feelings. It begins with alignment. 2 lives, 2 callings, 1 mission. That's the kind of love God blesses. That's the kind of union that builds legacy. So get clear on your calling, because once you know your purpose, the right partnership will make perfect sense. When God is in it, peace leads the way, not pressure, not panic, not confusion. God doesn't speak in chaos. He speaks in clarity. He doesn't force you to figure it out under stress. He guides you gently, steadily through the stillness of prayer. If you're feeling rushed, overwhelmed, or emotionally tangled, trying to decide if someone is the one, take a step back. God's voice brings peace. His direction carries stillness. The right relationship won't cause you to lose your mind trying to make it work. It will bring alignment you couldn't have manufactured on your own. Too often, people confuse intensity with intimacy. Just because something moves fast or feels passionate doesn't mean it's from God. The enemy knows how to create counterfeit connections that look like promises but carry pressure. That's why prayer is your filter. Prayer clears the fog, it silences the noise, it untangles the emotions. In prayer, God doesn't just answer your questions, He aligns your heart with His will, and when your heart is aligned, you won't be easily swayed by surface attraction or false peace. Pressure says, make a decision now. God says, wait and trust me. Pressure says, if you don't act, you'll miss it. God says, what's meant for you won't pass you by. Pressure produces panic. Prayer produces peace. And the peace of God doesn't always make logical sense, but it always brings spiritual confirmation. Sometimes everything may look right on the outside, but when you bring it before the Lord, something feels off. That's not paranoia, it's protection. The Holy Spirit isn't loud, but He is consistent. And if you listen closely in prayer, He'll show you what your eyes can't see. You don't have to force what's from God. If you're begging for clarity, chasing validation, or trying to hold something together that keeps falling apart, it might not be Him. When it's from God, there may still be challenges, but there won't be confusion. His voice settles, His presence confirms, His direction leaves no doubt. Clarity is not found in opinions or emotions. It's found on your knees. Look at how Jesus chose His disciples. Before selecting the 12, He spent the night in prayer. He didn't rush. He didn't lean on logic. He leaned on the Father. And from that place of communion came divine clarity. If Jesus prayed before choosing His inner circle, how much more should we pray before entering into covenant? Don't let pressure be your guide. Let prayer lead you, because when it's right, God will make it known. You won't have to manipulate it. You won't have to stress over it. You'll just know. Peace will settle where confusion once ruled. Confirmation will rise where doubt once lived. God is not hiding His will from you. He's waiting for you to seek Him for it. And when you do, clarity will come, not through pressure, but through prayer. Not every good person is a God person. Just because someone is kind, charming, or even spiritually active doesn't mean they're assigned to your life. The world says if it feels good, go with it. But the kingdom says if it's God, you'll know by the fruit, not just the feelings. Compatibility alone isn't enough. You can be drawn to someone and still not be aligned with them. What looks good to your heart may not be right for your calling. That's why discernment matters more than attraction. We live in a culture that tells us to prioritize chemistry, but chemistry without covenant leads to confusion. You can connect emotionally with someone who isn't called to walk with you spiritually. You can share interests, but not share vision. You can agree on values, but differ in direction. And when direction doesn't match, division eventually follows. Because God doesn't just send someone to make you happy, He sends someone to help you carry out purpose. A God-sent partner will not compete with your calling. They'll complement it. They won't feel threatened by your growth, your passion, or your obedience. They'll push you toward it. They'll pray with you through it. They'll celebrate what God is doing in you, not try to dim it. That kind of alignment doesn't come from looks or luck. It comes from discernment. And discernment is born in prayer, not pressure. You have to look beyond the surface, beyond charm, beyond potential, beyond the butterflies. Because butterflies fade, but fruit remains. What kind of fruit do they bear when no one's watching? How do they treat people when they're not trying to impress you? Do they have the maturity to lead when things get hard? Do they have the humility to follow when God redirects? Even Samuel, a prophet of God, almost anointed the wrong king because of appearance. He looked at Eliab and thought, this must be the one. But God said, man looks at the outward appearance, but I look at the heart. If a prophet could mistake the external for the eternal, so can we. That's why we must lean into God for wisdom, because the person who seems perfect might not be prepared, and the one God has for you may come in a package you didn't expect. Don't settle for someone who's simply good when God wants to give you someone who's right, someone who's not just a partner in romance, but a partner in purpose. Someone who can carry the weight of your calling and walk in step with the Spirit. You don't need just anyone. You need who heaven assigned. So pause, pray, discern. Don't let attraction blind you to the truth. Not every good person is your God person. And when you wait on Him, He won't just give you what looks good. He'll give you what is God. Feelings can be loud, but fruit is lasting. In a world driven by emotion, it's easy to mistake intensity for intimacy or butterflies for blessing. But emotions change. They rise and fall like waves. They can be stirred by a moment, a look, a word. But they were never meant to be the foundation for a lifelong decision. God doesn't confirm His will by how we feel in the moment. He confirms it through fruit, the steady, consistent evidence of His Spirit at work. You can't build a future on temporary highs. You can't discern a covenant connection by excitement alone, because what feels good today can fade tomorrow, but fruit remains. Fruit is how Jesus said we would know what is real and what is not. By their fruit You will know them, not by their charm, not by how they make you laugh, not even by how much they claim to love God, but by the fruit of their life, the patterns, the character, the spiritual maturity that flows when no one's watching. It's easy to say the right things. It's easy to worship publicly or quote scripture, but fruit shows up in how they handle pressure, how they treat people who can't offer them anything, how they respond when things don't go their way. Fruit is found in patience, humility, faithfulness, and integrity. And when God is writing your story, He will not confirm the person through emotional thrills. He will confirm them through spiritual fruit. A God-ordained connection won't just feel good. It will produce growth. It will sharpen your faith, not weaken it. It will bring you closer to God, not pull you further away. If you find yourself compromising, shrinking, or silencing your convictions just to keep a connection, that's not fruit, that's fear. And fear has no place in what God is building. Samson felt something strong for Delilah. The emotions were real, the chemistry was undeniable, but the fruit of that relationship was destruction. On the other hand, look at Mary and Joseph. Their story was marked by faith, obedience, and trust. Even through uncertainty and challenge, the fruit was clear. They carried purpose together. Don't settle for someone who gives you feelings but no fruit. Look at how they live, not just how they love. Do they pursue God when no one is watching? Do they push you closer to your purpose? Do they walk in peace or stir up confusion? Because love is not just about what's said, it's about what's shown. And fruit can't be faked forever. So ask God for eyes to see what feelings can't reveal. Ask Him to show you the roots behind the fruit. Because when it's from Him, it won't just feel right. It will bear fruit that lasts. And that kind of connection isn't just romantic. It's kingdom, it's legacy, it's love that grows deeper, even when the feelings fade. You were never meant to shrink to be loved. You were never created to silence your calling just to keep someone in your life. Divine connections do not demand you to diminish. They invite you to rise. The person God has for you will not be intimidated by your fire. They will be drawn to it. They will see the anointing on your life and honor it, not compete with it, not try to control it, not ask you to dial it down to make them feel more secure. The wrong connections always make you smaller. They cause you to question what God told you. They make you second-guess your assignment. You start hiding parts of yourself to maintain the peace. You start watering down your vision just to make the relationship work. But when God sends someone, they don't dim your light. They help you shine brighter. They won't try to change your design. They'll affirm it. They won't pull you away from the altar. They'll meet you there. Look at how God designed partnership in the beginning. Eve wasn't created beneath Adam. She wasn't created behind him. She was taken from his side, because real partnership walks together in unity, not in control. Real love doesn't feel like a tug of war. It feels like a mission shared. When two people are equally surrendered to God, they don't compete. They complete the assignment together. If someone needs you to abandon your purpose to stay in relationship, that's not love. That's manipulation. If you have to trade your calling for companionship, that's not God's will. That's a compromise. And compromise always costs more than you realize. God didn't call you to settle for someone who tolerates your fire. He called you to walk with someone who protects it, feeds it, fans it into greater flame. Jesus didn't surround himself with people who just admired his power. He chose disciples who would carry the mission forward, people who could handle the weight of the calling. And when he sent them out 2 by 2, it wasn't just about friendship, it was about alignment, because the right person will walk at your pace. They'll speak the language of your destiny, and they'll challenge you to become everything God has called you to be. So don't apologize for the anointing on your life. Don't shrink to be accepted. The one God has for you will not see your strength as a threat, but as a gift. They'll recognize your passion, not try to contain it. They'll encourage your obedience, not resent it. Because divine connection brings agreement, not resistance, empowerment, not envy. God's design for love doesn't require you to diminish. It calls you to expand, to grow together, to build together, to run together. When it's from Him, it won't make you less. It will call you into more. Peace doesn't mean everything looks perfect. It means your spirit is anchored even when things are still unfolding. Too often we wait for flawless circumstances before we feel secure. We think if it's truly from God, there will be no resistance, no questions, no tension. But peace isn't found in the absence of problems. It's found in the presence of God. And when He is in it, you'll feel it long before you see the fruit. His peace becomes your compass. Some confuse silence for peace. They assume that if there's no conflict, it must be right, but silence can be deceptive. Silence can hide avoidance, compromise, and buried red flags. Peace, however, cannot be faked. It's not passive. It's not numbness. Peace is active, alive. It brings clarity in the midst of uncertainty. It steadies your heart when your mind still has questions. It's not rooted in emotions. It's rooted in the presence of the one who knows the end from the beginning. When God is aligning two lives for His purpose, there may still be challenges. There may still be moments of tension or growth. But underneath it all, there will be peace. A quiet, holy confidence that says, this is right, even if it's not easy. It's the kind of peace that surpasses understanding, not because everything makes sense, but because your spirit knows you're in the center of His will. That's how God works. He doesn't just confirm through signs, He confirms through stillness. He gives you peace that overrides pressure. He gives you rest in the middle of questions. That's the signal. That's how you'll know. Not because everything is smooth on the surface, but because your heart no longer feels like it's fighting to breathe. You don't have to overanalyze every word. You don't have to walk on eggshells. You just know, you sense divine alignment. Look at Mary and Joseph. Their relationship wasn't easy. It was marked by uncertainty, questions, even scandal in the eyes of others. But through it all, there was peace. Joseph could have walked away. He could have made decisions based on logic or public opinion. But after encountering the presence of God, peace settled him. He knew the path wasn't simple, but it was sacred. You may be looking at your own situation right now and asking, how do I know if this is God? The answer is not always found in clarity of circumstance, but in clarity of spirit. Is there peace, not just between you and them, but within you? Do you feel like you're striving, or are you settled? God's voice will never lead you into emotional chaos. His direction always carries peace, even when the process is hard. So stop looking for perfect conditions. Look for presence. Look for peace, because when God is in it, peace will be the signal. Not silence, not the absence of trouble, but the still, unshakable knowing that He is here, and where He is, you are safe to trust. A promise out of season can feel like a problem, not because the promise is wrong, but because the timing isn't right. We don't just need the right person, we need the right moment. God's timing matters as much as His choice. He's not just preparing someone for you, He's preparing you for them. And when He brings two people together, He does it in such a way that both hearts are aligned, not just in feeling, but in maturity, purpose, and readiness. We often ask God for the promise, but we forget that with every promise comes weight, responsibility, growth, sacrifice. That's why God delays some things, not because He's denying us, but because He's developing us. If you step into a connection before the foundation is strong, it won't sustain the storm. Love isn't enough. You need timing. You need wisdom. You need spiritual stability. That's what God builds in the waiting. Think of David. He was anointed king as a young man, but he didn't sit on the throne immediately. Years passed. He served, he ran, he worshiped in caves. The promise was real, but the process took time because God was more concerned about preparing the king than placing the crown. In the same way, God might reveal the person, but hold back the connection, not to tease you, but to protect you, to make sure both of you are ready to steward the relationship well. Premature connections often look right on the surface, but break under pressure. They carry the appearance of peace, but lack the depth of preparation. And when two people come together without healed hearts, without clarity of calling, without the wisdom that comes from waiting on God, the relationship turns from a gift into a weight. What should bless you ends up draining you. Not because it wasn't God's will, but because it wasn't God's timing. You can't open the door just because you feel ready. You have to let God open it when He knows it's right. And when He does, there will be confirmation, not just in your heart, but in the fruit, not just in emotion, but in alignment. You won't have to fight to keep it together. Grace will cover it, peace will follow it, and purpose will be evident in it. So don't rush. Don't let fear convince you to settle. What's meant for you isn't in danger of leaving. It's in the hands of the one who knows you best. And His timing is never late. It's precise. When the person is ready and the season is right, God will do what only He can do. He won't just send love, He'll send legacy. He won't just give you the desire, you'll receive it in the fullness of time when the foundation is strong enough to hold it. Trust His timing. It's part of the promise. God never intended for you to discern your destiny in isolation. From the very beginning, He created us for community, not just for comfort, but for clarity, because sometimes the voice of God is echoed through the people He places in your life. Mentors, pastors, spiritual leaders, trusted friends, they may see what you can't. They're not meant to control your decisions, but to confirm what God is already whispering in your spirit. When you're walking through something as sacred as identifying a life partner, your emotions can speak louder than your discernment. That's why isolation is dangerous. It creates a space where feelings grow unchecked and assumptions feel like answers. You start to convince yourself that this must be God, simply because it feels right. But feelings aren't confirmation. Fruit is. And God often uses community to help you test the fruit. There's safety in accountability. There's wisdom in godly counsel. If the person you're considering for your future can't stand under the weight of spiritual covering, that's not alignment, it's avoidance. When someone resists accountability, it's usually because they fear exposure. But what's real won't be threatened by transparency. What's from God won't run from counsel, it will welcome it. Look at the early church. Decisions weren't made in private. They were brought before the body, prayed over, tested, confirmed. Paul didn't walk into ministry alone. He was affirmed by leadership and sent with blessing. Timothy didn't carry the call in secret. He was recognized and guided by Paul. Even Jesus didn't choose his path alone. He lived in obedience to the Father and honored the spiritual framework around him. In today's culture, independence is praised, but in the kingdom, interdependence protects. You need people who love you enough to tell you the truth, who aren't impressed by appearances but are sensitive to the Spirit, who can look past the surface and help you discern the substance. And when the right person comes, those voices in your life will echo what God is already showing you, not because you're looking for approval, but because you're walking in wisdom. If they're truly from God, they'll pass the test of community. They'll respect your boundaries, honor your covering, and invite input rather than resist it. Love that's rooted in God doesn't isolate, it integrates. It doesn't hide from the voices of wisdom, it embraces them. So don't navigate this alone. Invite trusted voices into the process. Ask for prayer, not just opinion. Seek discernment, not just validation, because when God brings the right person, He won't just confirm it in your heart. He'll confirm it through the people who walk with you. The right connection will stand in the light. And when it's from God, you won't have to force the fit. Community will confirm the call. Fear is a liar. And one of its favorite tactics is convincing you that good enough is all you'll ever have, that if you don't say yes now, you'll miss your only chance, that if you don't lower your standards, you'll be alone forever. It whispers quietly but persistently. You're getting older. You're running out of time. Maybe this is the best you'll get, but that's not faith, that's fear. And fear always leads to settling. The enemy knows he can't steal the promise, so he tries to sell you a counterfeit. Something close enough to seem right, but not strong enough to last. And if you're not rooted in trust, you'll mistake pressure for timing and loneliness for confirmation. You'll settle not because it's right, but because you're tired of waiting. You'll compromise not because you don't know better, but because you've started to believe that God might have forgotten you. But He hasn't. He sees you. He hears every late night prayer, every tear you hide behind strength, every time you wonder if it's ever going to happen. And He's not withholding His best to punish you. He's protecting you because He loves you too much to let you build something permanent with someone temporary, too much to let you plant your future in soil that won't sustain your purpose. God's delays are not denials. They are divine pauses, preparing both you and the promise. Look at Abraham and Sarah. They were promised a child, yet years passed with no sign. In the waiting, Sarah tried to take matters into her own hands and gave Hagar to Abraham. The result, a situation that brought more pain than peace. Not because God didn't keep His promise, but because they settled for a plan rooted in fear instead of faith. But even after their mistake, God remained faithful. Isaac came, not on their schedule, but on God's. The truth is, settling may fill the void temporarily, but it will always cost you in the long run. It may soothe your emotions, but it will starve your spirit, because when you settle, you silence your faith. You choose comfort over calling. But you weren't created to just be with someone. You were created to build something eternal with someone who aligns with your purpose, your vision, your destiny. God's best often requires patience, and patience requires trust. But what He has for you is worth every minute of waiting. When it comes, it won't come with confusion or compromise. It will come with peace, with clarity, with fruit. So don't let fear write your story. Let faith lead you. You're not late. You're not overlooked. You're not forgotten. You are being preserved for something sacred. And when it arrives, you'll know exactly why every almost had to fall away. Because God never intended for you to settle. He called you to receive His best. When it's God, you'll know, not just in your heart, but in your spirit, not because the circumstances are perfect or the emotions are overwhelming, but because everything in you will recognize His peace wrapped in clarity. You won't have to chase it. You won't have to force it. You won't have to bend into someone else's expectations or break your convictions to keep them close. What God ordains carries His fingerprint, marked by peace, anchored in purpose, confirmed by fruit, and sealed with timing that only He could orchestrate. God's will never demands compromise. It never asks you to silence your calling just to keep someone's attention. It never pressures you to lower your standards or abandon your values. When the connection is from Him, it won't draw you away from His presence. It will draw you deeper into it, because God doesn't just give you someone to love. He gives you someone who helps you love Him more. Someone who joins you in pursuit of the cross. Someone who lifts your arms when you're weary and speaks life into the places that have gone quiet. There will be confirmation, not just through your emotions, but through alignment. The way they honor God. The way they speak life into your dreams. The way your assignments don't clash, but complement each other. You'll find yourselves running the same race, not having to pull or drag each other along, but moving in step, fueled by shared vision and mutual surrender. And when the timing is right, it will come together, not because you made it happen, but because God did. He writes love stories with eternity in mind. He doesn't rush. He prepares. He aligns hearts, clears paths, and removes distractions. And when He finally reveals the one He's chosen, it will not feel like striving. It will feel like peace, not perfection, but alignment. Not absence of obstacles, but presence of grace. The waiting, the wondering, the almosts, they all lead to this moment of divine clarity. You won't have to beg for reassurance. You won't need 100 signs. When it's God, everything in you will settle. Because what's from Him comes with a knowing, a confidence that doesn't make you prideful, but makes you peaceful. That's the gift of His voice. It doesn't shout over your doubts, it silences them. So let go of the need to figure it all out. You don't have to make it happen, you just have to stay close to the one who's writing your story. And when it's time, He'll bring the one who was never meant to compete with your purpose, but to build it with you. You won't have to guess, you won't have to strive, you'll just know, because when it's God, it's undeniable. It fits, it flows, it glorifies Him, and it brings you home to something holy.